Hello and welcome to Take Your Medicine. On today's show, we talk about dealing with grief. At some point in everyone's life, there will be at least one encounter with grief. It may be from the death of a loved one, the loss of a job, the end of a relationship, or any other change that alters life as you know it. Grief is not linear or neat. It doesn't follow any timelines or schedules. You may cry, become angry, withdrawn, and feel empty. None of these things are unusual or wrong. Everyone grieves differently, but there are some commonalities in the stages and the order of feelings experienced during grief. The 5 stages of grief may be the most widely known, but it's far from the only popular stages of grief theory. Several others exist as well, including ones with 7 stages and ones with just 2. The 5 stages of grief we will discuss today are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Not everyone will experience all 5 stages, and you may not go through them in this order. Grief is different for every person, so you may begin coping with loss in the bargaining stage and find yourself in anger or denial next. You may remain for months in one of the 5 stages, but skip others entirely. The first stage is denial. Grief is an overwhelming emotion. It's not unusual to respond to the intense and often sudden feeling by pretending the loss or change isn't happening. Denying it gives you time to more gradually absorb the news and begin to process it. This is a common defense mechanism and helps numb you to the intensity of the situation. As you move out of the denial stage, the emotions you've been hiding will begin to rise. You'll be confronted with a lot of sorrow you've denied. This is also part of the journey of grief, but it can be difficult. The next stage is anger. Where denial may be considered a coping mechanism, anger is a masking effect. Anger is hiding many of the emotions and pain that you carry. This anger may be redirected at other people, such as the person who died, your ex, or your old boss. You may even aim your anger at inanimate objects. While your rational brain knows the object of your anger isn't to blame, your feelings in that moment are too intense to feel that. Anger may mask itself in feelings like bitterness or resentment. It may not be clear-cut fury or rage. Not everyone will experience this stage, and some may linger here. As the anger subsides, you may begin to think more rationally about what's happening and feel the emotions you've been pushing aside. The next stage is the bargaining stage. During grief, you may feel vulnerable and helpless. In those moments of intense emotions, it's not uncommon to look for ways to regain control or to want to feel like you can affect the outcome of the event. In the bargaining stage of grief, you may find yourself creating a lot of what if and if only statements. It's also not uncommon for religious individuals to try to make a deal or promise to God or a higher power in return for healing or relief from the grief and pain. Bargaining is a line of defense against the emotions of grief. It helps you postpone the sadness, confusion, or hurt. The next stage of grief is depression. Whereas anger and bargaining can feel very active, depression may feel like a quiet stage of grief. In the early stages of loss, you may be running from the emotions, trying to stay a step ahead of them. By this point, however, you may be able to embrace and work through them in a more healthy form manner. You may also choose to isolate yourself from others in order to fully cope with the loss. That doesn't mean, however, that depression is easy or well defined. Like the other stages of grief, depression can be difficult and messy. It can feel overwhelming. You may feel foggy, heavy, and confused. Depression may feel like the inevitable landing point of any loss. If you feel stuck here or can't seem to move past the stage of grief, please talk to a mental health expert. A therapist can help you work through this period. of coping. The fifth stage of grief is acceptance. Acceptance is not necessarily a happy or uplifting stage of grief. It doesn't mean you've moved past the grief or loss. It does, however, mean that you've accepted it and have come to understand what it means in your life. Now, you may feel very different in this stage. That's entirely expected. You've had a major change in your life, and that upends the way you feel about many things. Look to acceptance as a way to see that there may be more good days than bad. But the key to understanding grief is realizing that no one experiences it the same way. Grief is very personal, and you may feel something different every time. You may need several weeks or grieve many years. If you decide you need help coping with the feelings and changes, a mental health professional is a good resource for vetting your feelings and finding a sense of assurance in these very heavy and weighty emotions. These emotions may be bad, but that's okay. I want to thank you guys for joining me. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Stay safe, stay blessed, take care, goodbye.